They say history is written in fire and blood, and nowhere is that more true than in the tale of Aegon Targaryen, the man who bent a continent to his will not with mere armies or gold but with dragons. His story is not just legend, it is the foundation of the world we know. The moment when 7 warring kingdoms became one realm under a single crown. Tonight, we step back into the age before the Iron Throne was forged, before the Targaryens ruled by birthright, to the time when one man set out to conquer Westeros. This is the tale of Aegon the Conqueror, and how he forged the 7 kingdoms. But before we begin, tell me, where are you watching this from? And what hour is it in your part of the realm? Is it the quiet of dawn or the dark of midnight? Wherever you are, welcome. Settle in, for this is a tale of ambition, fire, and the making of kings. Aegon Targaryen was not the first of his house to cross the narrow sea. His ancestors had come to Dragonstone, a bleak volcanic island off the coast of Westeros, more than a century before his birth. They were dragon lords of Valyria, a people who had mastered fire-breathing beasts and bent them to their will. But Valyria was gone, consumed by a cataclysm so sudden and total that it left Aegon's house as the last of their kind. From Dragonstone, the Targaryens watched the fractured realm of Westeros across the waters. 7 kingdoms, each proud and ancient, each unwilling to bow to another. Yet Aegon dreamed not of islands or titles, he dreamed of empire. Legend tells us that Aegon turned his eyes west not for gold nor for glory, but because he saw destiny itself in the smoke and fire of his dragon's wings. His sister wives, Visenya and Rhaenys, shared his vision, though each in her own way. Visenya was stern, sharp as the blade of Dark's sister, her Valyrian steel sword. Rhaenys was bold, adventurous, with her laughter and curiosity that matched the wild spirit of her dragon, Meraxes. And Aegon himself rode Balerion, the Black Dread, the greatest dragon the world had ever seen, vast and terrible, with wings that could blot out the sun. When the time came, Aegon did not simply invade. He declared his purpose to all the lords of Westeros. He sent word that he did not come as a raider, nor as a king claiming one crown among many, but as the ruler who would bind all beneath him. Bend the knee, he said, and keep your lands and titles. Resist and face fire. He made his first landing at the mouth of the Blackwater, where 3 rivers met the sea. There, he raised a wooden fort upon a hill, a humble start to what would one day become the greatest city in the realm, King's Landing. With him came his sisters, his small host of loyal men, and of course, his dragons. On that hilltop, before the 7 kingdoms had even taken notice of the threat that loomed, Aegon was crowned with a circlet of Valyrian steel, hammered from the blades of his defeated foes. Beneath the open sky, he was hailed as king. Not of Dragonstone, not of one realm, but of all Westeros. The first great test of Aegon's strength came swiftly. From the north, west, and south, lords rose to resist the Dragon Lord. The proud King Harrenhal of the Riverlands and the Ironlands sat secure within his towering fortress of Harrenhal, a monstrous castle of black stone said to be impregnable. Its walls were higher than any ladder, thicker than any ram could break, and Harren boasted that no fire could touch him within its halls. Yet Harren had never seen dragonfire. Aegon marched upon Harrenhal with Balerion soaring above him, his wings casting vast shadows over the Riverlands. Harren, defiant to the last, refused surrender. And so it was that on the night of Harrenhal's doom, Balerion's fire fell from the skies. Stone melted like wax. Towers cracked and split. Men screamed as they burned within their mighty walls, and King Harren himself perished in a blaze so fierce it blackened stone. Thus fell House Hoare, and the Riverlands turned to Aegon. The lords of the Trident bent the knee, swearing fealty to the Dragon Lord, who had done what no army could. He had burned Harrenhal to ash. From that moment on, all of Westeros understood the power Aegon wielded. Dragons were not mere beasts. They were weapons of conquest, engines of destruction that could topple castles and end dynasties in a single night. This section covers the Field of Fire, the fall of the Stormlands, submission of the Reach and the Rock, and the resistance of Dorne. The fall of Harrenhal sent ripples across the realm, but fire alone could not unite 7 proud kingdoms. Each king still clung to his crown, each house to its ancient pride. To the west lay Loren Lannister, King of the Rock, who ruled the wealth of Casterly Rock and the endless gold mines beneath it. To the south, Myrn Gardner sat upon the high seat of Highgarden, with the fertile fields of the Reach swelling his coffers and feeding his armies. Both kings feared the rise of Aegon, but neither would kneel. Instead, they forged an alliance, the might of the Reach and the Rock together, boasting the largest host ever raised in Westerosi memory. 60,000 men, armored knights, spearmen, archers, all gathering to crush the upstart Dragon Lord. Aegon met them not with equal numbers, but with something far greater. He called upon the strength of his sisters. From the east came Rhaenys upon Meraxes, and from the north, Visenya upon Vhagar. Aegon himself rode Balerion, the Black Dread, whose wings stretched wider than a village, and whose fire burned hotter than the heart of a mountain. On the plains of the Reach, beneath a blazing summer sun, the two hosts clashed. It was called the Field of Fire. At first, steel met steel, shields rang, and knights clashed in thunderous charge. But when the 3 dragons took to the sky together, the tide of battle shifted. Their shadows fell upon the field, and then the world itself seemed to burn. A wall of flame swept across the ranks of men. Shields caught fire. Armor turned red-hot upon their wearers. Thousands perished in the inferno. King Myrn Gardner was among them, burned alive with all his sons. The proud line of the Gardeners ended that day, leaving their crownless kingdom in ashes. King Loren of the Rock, his army shattered, saw the truth written in smoke. He bent the knee before Aegon, and the Lannisters of Casterly Rock became lords of the West, sworn to House Targaryen. In Highgarden, Aegon bestowed the Reach upon the stewards of the Gardeners, House Tyrell, who had thrown open their gates in submission. Thus, with one battle, the Reach and the West were one, and the tale of Aegon's invincibility spread like wildfire across the land. But not all were so swift to yield. To the south, the Stormlands were ruled by Argilac the Arrogant, last of the Storm Kings. A proud warrior in his old age, Argilac spurned Aegon's call to bend the knee. He raised his banners and marched his knights. But he had not reckoned with Orys Baratheon, Aegon's general and rumored half-brother. Orys led Aegon's host against the Storm King, and when the two armies met, Argilac fought with the fury of his name. Yet fury was no match for youth and strength. In the press of battle, Orys struck him down. The Storm King's line ended with him, and his daughter was given in marriage to Orys, who took the sigil, words, and lands of the fallen kings. Thus was born House Baratheon, loyal blood of the dragon. King after king fell before Aegon. From the Vale came Shara Arryn, the Queen Regent, who thought to buy time with diplomacy. She sent envoys bearing gold, jewels, and promises of alliance. But when Visenya rode Vhagar to the Eyrie, the impregnable fortress of the Vale, she landed upon the mountain peak itself. Child in hand, young Ronald Arryn, heir of the Vale. With the boy upon Dragonback, his mother had no choice. The lords of the Vale bent the knee, and the falcon banner flew beneath the dragon's wings. By now, the realm trembled. 6 of the kingdoms had bowed or burned. Yet one still defied the Targaryens, the southern sands of Dorne. Princess Miriam Martell, ancient and cunning, refused Aegon's terms. "You may burn us," she told his envoys, "but you cannot conquer us. We are a people unbowed, unbent, unbroken." True to her word, the Dornish did not meet Aegon in open battle. They melted into their deserts, their mountains, their hidden passes. When Rhaenys brought Meraxes to rain fire upon the Dornish lords, She found only empty castles, fields stripped bare, wells poisoned. Again and again, the Targaryens struck, and again, their enemies vanished into the sands. It was not a war of armies, but of shadows, of assassins and ambushes. The dragon's fire could burn castles, but it could not burn a people who refused to stand and fight. Frustrated, Aegon left Dorne unconquered, turning instead to solidify his rule where victory had been won. Yet the Dornish defiance would echo for generations, a thorn in the flesh of the dragon throne. And so, within just 2 years, Aegon Targaryen had bent or broken 6 of the 7 crowns of Westeros. From the Trident to the Rock, from the Vale to the Stormlands, all bowed before the might of fire and blood. Only Dorne stood apart, defiant in the sands. Still, the realm had changed forever. The Age of 7 Kingdoms was over. A new age had dawned, the Age of the Dragon. Final section covers the aftermath of the conquest, Aegon's coronation, the forging of the Iron Throne, his rule and his legacy. The wars of conquest had ended. 6 crowns had fallen or been bent, their lords sworn to a new master. Aegon had done what no king before him dared even dream. He had bound the fractious kingdoms of Westeros into one realm. Yet the conquest was only the beginning. To rule was a challenge greater still. At the mouth of the Blackwater, where he had first raised his banner, Aegon declared the seat of his power. No ancient fortress would serve him, no hall of kings past. Instead, upon that muddy hill, he built anew. Wooden palisades grew into stone keeps, markets spread, ships crowded the river mouth. A city began to rise around the Dragon's Hill, swelling with merchants, smiths, and soldiers. They called it King's Landing, and in time, it would become the beating heart of Westeros, a city of 1,000,000 souls, where power and intrigue flowed like the river itself. But Aegon did not rest, for he knew that swords had won him crowns, yet only law and order could keep them. He traveled the realm, his dragons above him, his sisters at his side. In each kingdom, he sought oaths of fealty, demanding not just submission but loyalty. He did not strip the lords of their lands, nor did he abolish their ancient rights. Instead, he bound them together beneath his throne, each still a lord of their own lands, but all answering to one king. Still, there were those who whispered defiance. Rebellions smoldered in the Riverlands, where Harren's ashes still smoked. Others tested the dragon's resolve in the Stormlands and the Vale. Each time, Aegon answered swiftly. His armies marched, his dragon soared, and rebellion was quenched in fire. It was in this time that Aegon forged the symbol of his power, the throne that would come to define the realm itself. From the swords of his defeated enemies, over 1,000 blades, surrendered or torn from the grasp of the fallen. He bade the smiths melt and hammer them into a single seat of power. But this was no gilded chair, no ornament of vanity. The Iron Throne was jagged, twisted, uncomfortable. Blades jutted from its arms and back. Sharp edges remained unfiled. A king should never sit easy, Aegon said, for the burden of rule is not comfort but duty. And so the Iron Throne became not just a seat, but a warning. That power is forged in struggle, and that to rule was to bleed. In the years that followed, Aegon showed himself not merely a conqueror, but a king. He summoned councils of lords and learned men, establishing the beginnings of a central realm. He minted coins stamped with the 3-headed dragon of his house. He proclaimed laws that bound the kingdoms under one justice. And though his dragons were fearsome, he used them sparingly, for he knew that rule by fire alone would never endure. The faith of the Seven was another trial. Many septons and pious lords looked upon the Targaryens, dragon lords who married brother to sister, with suspicion, even loathing. Yet Aegon proved a shrewd statesman. He sought the blessing of the High Septon, promising protection for the faith in exchange for recognition of his rule. With fire in one hand and faith in the other, Aegon bound the common folk as surely as he had their lords. But not all hearts could be won. Dorne remained defiant, its deserts unconquered. Rhaenys herself fell in that land, slain when a scorpion bolt struck Meraxes from the sky. Her death burned deep within Aegon's heart, yet even then, he did not launch a war of annihilation. Perhaps he had learned that dragons could burn castles, but not a people. And so Dorne remained outside his grasp, free for another century. In his later years, Aegon was no longer the fiery warrior who had crossed the narrow sea with only a few hundred men. He grew older, heavier, slower. Yet, his presence remained awe-inspiring. Wherever he rode Balerion, the skies seemed to darken, the earth to tremble. He was not called cruel, nor was he remembered as gentle. Instead, they called him simply Aegon the Dragon, Aegon the Conqueror, the man who had forged a kingdom. When at last he died, after nearly 4 decades upon his Iron Throne, all of Westeros mourned. From the north to the Reach, from the Vale to the Stormlands, lords and small folk alike paid tribute, for they knew they lived in a realm remade by his hand. He was laid to rest in the crypts of Dragonstone, beside his beloved Rhaenys, while Visenya lingered on, the last of the Conqueror's trio. His legacy endured. For centuries, the Targaryens ruled the realm he had forged. Kings and queens rose and fell, thrones were contested, blood was shed, but always, the Iron Throne remained, the symbol of Aegon's dream of unity. Even when that dream was broken in fire and civil war, his name lived on, whispered in halls, remembered in chronicles, carved into the very bones of the land. And so, the tale of Aegon Targaryen is not just a story of conquest. It is the story of a vision that turned 7 quarrelsome kingdoms into one realm, bound not by choice, but by fire. A vision that echoed across the ages, shaping the destiny of Westeros for centuries to come. For in the end, when we speak of kings and crowns, of wars and thrones, we still return to the man who began it all, Aegon the Conqueror, the first king, the dragon who forged the 7 kingdoms. And so, our tale of fire and blood draws to its close. But history lives on in those who keep it alive. If this story has kindled your interest, let your voice be heard. Tell us in the comments from which corner of the realm you watch, and which part of Aegon's conquest burned brightest in your imagination. If you would see more chronicles of dragons and kings, strike that like button as though it were a sword upon a shield. And join our company by subscribing so that when the next tale is told, you will be here to hear it. Until then, remember, the past is never truly gone. It waits like a dragon in the dark, ready to rise again.